Can it actually be a positive thing?
Now, as we heard earlier this week, David Cameron was late to take the stage at the Conservative Party conference in Manchester as he reworded his keynote speech. Now, he was due to tell us we should pay back our debts before going out spending again.
But that wasn't what the Office for Budgetary Responsibility was suggesting. In March, the OBR said we would only have growth next year if there was more consumer spending. But the kind of spending that they were talking about would mean British households taking up a staggering £570 billion worth of additional debt by the year 2015. So, to get the economy moving, is that a price worth paying? Is that debt worth taking on? With us this morning to talk about all things debt, we've got Caroline Hamilton from the Consumer Credit Counselling Service. Grant Lewis is with us, Head of Research at Daiwa Capital Markets. Dr. Tim Loying, who's Chief Economist at the Centre Forum and an LSE academic to boot. And finally, we've got Michael Jones with us as well. And Michael, let's start with you, because when we're talking about debt in the small picture and the big picture, you as an individual, you've suffered very badly with personal debt. Tell us a little more about it.
Well, I've been actually dealing with debt now for what we come up to 11 years. I ran into trouble in 2001 to 2002. Where I would, for the next 2 to 3 years then, I would deal with the banks. The banks weren't really that sympathetic towards my cause. I then engaged a debt management company in 2004, a company called DCM Apex. And we was with them for 7 years and entered what was called a DMP. And in May of 2011, this year, I had to go bankrupt because DCM failed me by going into administration after what appears to be taking a large sum of money, £30,000.
Right, so £50,000 is what you reckon you've lost. What do you owe exactly? How much is your debt?
In 2004, which was when I engaged DCM, I owed £38,000 worth of debt.
Okay, Michael, so look, I get the idea very clearly about the spiral that you got caught in, but I'm still not sure why you got into debt to begin with. What was it that first pushed you into this cycle of borrowing?
There were some personal issues in my life which required resolving, one of which was a protracted access fight to see my oldest son, in which you naturally think, well, I'll do the right thing and fight for my son, borrow whatever money is necessary to pursue my former partner through the courts to get the access that I wanted. That was quite costly, plus there's the everyday to-day living allowances that you always have. It then got to a stage where you would increase your credit levels.
Sorry, Michael, I was just wanted to bring you in, Caroline Hamilton from Consumer Credit Counsel. We've heard Michael's story there. You deal with hundreds of calls a day, of course, from people like Michael. Now, a lot of people will instantly say, if you can't afford it, don't buy it. Don't put it on a credit card. We've become a society of buy now, pay later. What would your response to that be?
Well, I think that the wise use of credit can be a good thing. Like you mentioned earlier, the economy grows because of borrowing. I think that in Michael's case, he did find himself in a cycle, as I suppose that once he'd started down the legal path, the money that he'd spent up until that point would have been lost had he not continued his fight. The other thing that tends to happen to a lot of our clients is that they borrow what is a sensible amount based on their circumstances, and then a change in their circumstances, such as unemployment or illness, prevents them from being able to meet a commitment that they otherwise would have comfortably been able to meet.
So how did you feel, and how do you think your customers would feel the message that seemed to come out from David Cameron earlier on this week, that we should just pay back our debts, that's it, just pay them back?
Well, I think that what David Cameron has done is it's a good thing that he's thrown a spotlight on personal debt, because it is a big issue at the moment. And I think that people like Michael need to tell their story so that we ensure that the people who do want to pay back their debts can find help from a free organisation that will give them quality advice. The Consumer Credit Counselling Service, had we dealt with Michael back in 2004, we would have been paying the whole £30,000 to his credit debts, free of charge, without that costing him anything. It would have even been free for him to call us. We've got a free phone number, which is 0800 138 1111. What I would like to say though is for the clients that we see, 1 in 3 actually struggle to meet their household bills. So somebody like Michael who can actually afford to pay something back towards his creditors, yes, it's a good idea for him to be dealing with his debt effectively through an organisation like ourselves. But there are a lot of households that can't even get that far because of the gas, the electric, the rent, the council tax. These things are putting big pressures on incomes at the moment.
We've talked about these payday loans, and you were saying about how many calls you get a day for these sort of the payday loans that are taken out. Now, I've seen these ads on TV, which are incredibly seductive, and they're saying, oh, you know, it gets to the end of the month, you can't quite, you know, the car breaks down, or there's that unexpected phone bill, you know, just take out these payday loans. These have 1,700% APR. Do people even understand what the implications of one of these loans are? Because does this anger you that these can even be out there and legal?
Well, there is a place for short-term credit. You know, I'm not going to kind of suggest that there's no need to borrow small amounts for a specific purpose. I think the issue that I have with payday loans is that when people borrow the money, they have to pay it back within a very short period of time, often on their actual payday. So if somebody earning the national average of £25,000 a year takes a £300 or £400 loan, that they've got to pay back on their payday, they're going to be starting that month with a £300 or £400 handicap, which means that they're more likely to get to the end of that month and need to borrow more money, and there's a spiral that starts to occur. And you're right, you know, that there are much cheaper forms of credit available out there. If they do need to fill a short-term gap, they maybe should be considering before they go to a payday lender.
Well, I mean, we're going to zoom out of this picture in just a little while. We've got our 2 economists on hand to just talk about this bigger picture, this idea that actually we do need to run up a bit of debt. We need to get people spending, otherwise this country is going to end up flat on its back. It's the only way to get the economy moving. And therefore, I just wonder, Caroline, is your philosophy just pay off all debt all the time, always, that's the way it must be, or is there an amount of manageable personal debt that is an optimum debt, let's say, that somebody should have?
I think a prudent approach to credit would probably be my advice. We all need to borrow from time to time. I think overcommitting is definitely a danger. But I think that even taking on a sensible amount of credit can lead to problems if there's a change in circumstances at a later date. Okay. I think that's a bit of a crystal ball question, really. It's quite hard to answer for sure.
It's very interesting because it is crystal ball that people are going to have to actually start looking into if some of this advice coming from the OBR is true and to be followed. Thank you very much for now, but we have got Dr. Tim Loining, and also we have Grant Lewis just waiting to discuss this. We want your thoughts as well. 85058 is where we are. Double take at bbc.co.uk.
First, let's just cross over to Ian Robinson, who of course is at Eden Park in Auckland.